Welcome to the Evening Review Show. My name is Jemima Beatrice, your host this evening. Let's have a look at tomorrow's headlines. Welcome back. The fight for reparations and restitution for the victims of the 1904-1908 Nama and Ovaherero genocide has gained momentum this week when protesters from the affected communities went to Parliament demanding answers and a review of the deal by Germany, an 18.4 billion deal from Germany. We are speaking to activist Sandy Tjaronda on what this opposition is about. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Tjaronda.
Thank you so much for having me, Jemima.
Now, Mr. Tjaronda, you were also part of the protesters and demonstrators yesterday against Germany's 18.4 billion reparations package. What exactly is the position of the affected communities?
Well, yeah, it is true that I was part of the group, different Namibians that have raised their voice yesterday clearly to demonstrate their disgruntlement, obviously, about what is now sitting before us as a bilateral agreement. The issue here is about, one is about the text, and I think you have seen also in Parliament yesterday there was an issue of people wanting to see what is the text, what is contained in that agreement, and it doesn't look like that agreement was before members of Parliament, which I think in the first place tells you a story. The other one is obviously about the terminology that we are using. We are talking about a negotiation process, but the question is, what is it that we're negotiating? So I don't know whether the narrative is the same, because in as far as the genocide is concerned, you can negotiate the reference in relation to, and I think that is what I thought they were negotiating, to try to get the Germans to agree to the fact that they committed genocide. And that when that agreement has been reached, then we need to explore within the context of international laws that are available to us to say, this is genocide. Now, this is how genocide is approached, and this is how you seek redress when there is genocide. So it was not negotiating for projects. It was not negotiating for, it was a demand. And that's what I want to bring here, that genocide is not negotiated. You demand. You are owed reparation at the end of the day, according to international instruments. So, yeah, I think that is where we are missing each other, and we keep on speaking past each other because we are not maybe speaking from the same page and the same chapter.
Now, I know you've just said that you don't believe in negotiating when it comes to reparations. However, the biggest bone of contention in this issue is the fact that some affected communities feel that they have not been involved during the negotiations. However, government insists that they were in fact affected communities that were part of this. Can you please share with us your opinion on this?
Yeah, government will obviously want to justify their position because they want a quick fix. They want to get rid of this and tick the box and continue. They feel it's a tedious thing to them, as far as I'm concerned. But that's why I want us to come back to the understanding that within the context of genocide, you don't brush something aside like that. And you also, it's not up to you to decide what it is that will constitute inclusivity. Because if the community still feel inadequately consulted, who are you to tell them that they are consulted? If they still feel that they are not part of the conversation, then you need to find a way of bringing them on board. Not to say and brush them aside and say, no, we know that they have been consulted. And whatever you might be considering as adequate consultation, somebody might feel that it's not adequate, because there is so many things that goes into discussions and conversations, because depending on the level of understanding and the intellectual apprehension, then you might be missing each other. And I think that has been the biggest problem, because we have not gone down to break it down maybe to the communities to understand. It has just been kidnapping them and taking them on something that they probably have, and taking them to where you want them to go. So I think that has been the nature of negotiation, and that is why today, even today, government can still be challenged that then escalate the matter to a referendum. If you think that people have been adequately consulted, escalate it to a referendum. They will not do that, and I can still challenge them today that escalate the matter to a referendum so that you can test whether indeed people have really been consulted.
Yes, you are talking about escalating it to a referendum, but then also in your view, what is adequately consulted? Because although it is widely believed that the chiefs that were consulted were only co-opted and they didn't have much say, in their own words, they were oftentimes overlooked. The reality is that these chiefs are legitimate representatives of these communities. So in your view, what is now adequately
Yeah, you are pointing to a very important thing. I think, yes, the consultation with our chiefs, we are the subjects of chiefs, and they, at a given time, they are obviously, maybe there was a discussion with them, but nobody can up to today tell you, because the very chief that were consulted today are not sitting at the same table. Each one has got their own interpretation. So what is it that you're consulting them about, and what is it that we are telling them? What was the narrative, and why, if there was consistency in the message that we are giving to them, why should each one of them be having their own interpretation? So I think here we are talking about a government that is not negotiating in good faith, having their own agenda that they are advancing, and that is not something that the community is hiding. They are saying, we know that you have got your own agenda, and we will have to find out what that agenda is against these groups. Okay.
Now, the president himself and many other politicians argues that one cannot put a price on a life. What are your views on this?
I can only laugh at that kind of sentiment, because, and it's very disappointing for that matter. You cannot have the president of a country saying that, contradicting himself the next day, saying with his own cabinet, saying what has been presented is not acceptable. So what is not acceptable for what? Yeah. Well, I agree, yes, you can't put a price to somebody's life, but I must educate the president. It was not about the lives of these people alone. Yes, the life was very, very important. But 1896 to 1905, there was a treaty, an imperial treaty that was talking about a deprivation treaty, that in my view, it's written, it's recorded, that was talking about the ownership of certain things being taken away from these groups. So in other words, you were told that if you had land, you are going to lose that land. If you had a cattle, you are going to lose that cattle. So that alone, cumulatively, if you look at it, how many cattle these people and what wealth could they be having, that means they lost all that. If you cumulatively look at the lives that we lost of people that lost their lives at that time, and look at it to today, bring it to today, you should have been having a lot of people, part of our population. So if you look at that and still say you cannot quantify it, then why are we having a quantum? If you are saying you cannot actually talk about put a price to life, why are we talking about quantums today? Yeah, then that means everything that the Germans could have offered the sitting president and his government today they would have accepted it, because they are not under any of, they have got that interpretation. And I think they are doing a very serious omission and commission here, because it's not about their interpretation that is going to matter at the end of the day. It's about what the international laws are saying, and they must go and associate themselves with the laws that are governing genocide.
Okay. So when we come back from an ad break, we will talk about the role of the German-speaking Namibians. Welcome back. If you have just joined us, we are talking to activist Sandy Tjaronda about the fight for reparations for the 1904-1908 genocide. So, Mr. Tjaronda, local German-speaking Namibians said they really want this issue to be resolved. In your view, what is the role of this community when it comes to pushing Germany to review this deal as is demanded by the affected communities?
Yeah, I'm glad that they have you are talking about roles here, and the local German-speaking Namibians or German-speaking Namibians have actually come at last to found brevity to speak about this issue. They are playing they could play a very important role. We have lived with these brothers and sisters of ours in the country, and I think ever since the independence of this country, after we adopted the policy of national reconciliation, we chose the route of reconciliation and to live together and to coexist. But that does not take away the fact that we still have wounds that we are struggling to get healed. And I have been following the news that they met the president recently, and they are speaking about the need for closure. The need for closure will start with them. The need for closure will start with them, how they share the resources they have available to them, how they share the land, because the genocide was about, as I talked before, it was about wealth, and it was about the land that the Hereros and the Namas had in their possession. And that was heavily targeted. And this land is here, it's not in Germany. This land is here, and we pass next to that land every day. We drive next to that farm every day. We experience challenges with some of the farms that we live next to them every day as a community. In fact, I must make it clear that in as far as 2 years ago, we had a couple of challenges with finding ourselves to live in harmony with some of the German neighbors who are owning farms, because they would come and accuse us of all kinds of things, or communities living next to them of all kinds of things. That kind of thing strains relationships, and it could spiral into something that we don't want. So they have to share what they have in terms of the wealth that they have, make a conscious decision to start to do that, because that will be part of the important movement towards seeking that reparation and also agreeing to coexist. But also they need to speak to the German government, because that is, one has to think that maybe the German government is protecting their interest here in the country. And that is why they're sitting in the comfort, and they don't want to be they are not coming out very much strongly. So they need to speak and convince the government of Germany that it's high time that you do this, because otherwise we are also at risk.
Now, when he was still alive, the late Paramount Chief Rocco said, or he warned at the time, German communities, that if they don't come to the table, that the land may be taken. So now you've also said something interesting, that if they don't come to the table, basically, it may spiral out of control. Can you please elaborate on your words, spiral out of control?
Yes, I cannot hide the emotions. We have emotional attachment to our land. We can't take that away from us. We drive through next to farms today that have got our names, written our names clearly. I can make that connection. I know who used to be there, who used to live there. I know the communities who were there, who were born there. You speak about Erindi, for instance. You speak about where there are people that are still alive today that used to live there, that stayed there. Our ancestral graves are still there. So you cannot, we are not hiding this. We are trying to maintain peace. And I think how long that is going to take, I cannot guarantee. But we are, as communities, we are trying to hold and to withhold ourselves to say we want to maintain this peace that we have, because it's a rare thing and we want to keep it. But if that is not, if somebody else does not see the way things are going and does not want, is not interested in contributing to that peace, we can get to that point of whether you call it an explosion or whether you call it what. But this is definitely a ticking time bomb.
Now, before we conclude, one last question. There are calls on the youth to start taking over this fight. How do you think what role should young people from the affected communities play to make sure this fight doesn't die?
Young people have been caught up in so many things that maybe it's only important to them. This matter is the matter. This is the most important discussion that people should be talking about. Yesterday in the demonstration, a young person passed by in a taxi, and out of curiosity, he asked us, "Is this a funeral procession?" And with all the information that is available to them, with all the social media, young people are not there. Because why? They don't open radio, they don't listen to news, they all the time they are occupied with music that does not say and add value to them. So we need to get young people to use their energy positively. After all, it is them that will live in the future that we are trying to mold right now. It is them that we are trying to get this for, so that when that is happening, when that wealth comes, it has to be for them. It can't be, at the end of it, for us, as they say, without us. So whether we're talking about the generations today, we are also not anticipating, we are not under the illusion that this discussion will finish tomorrow. Parliament today, whatever they are discussing and whenever they are discussing, is not going to complete this process. So people will come and go. These young people must be prepared to take over the baton and run with it. So that is why the person that spoke about that literally said young people need to be involved and need to take interest in this issue. In conclusion, I want to say one conspicuous but I think not surprising omission in this conundrum is the same Nyoma factor. I'm terribly disappointed that as the father of the nation, he's not taking interest in this discussion. He needs to come forward, gather his courage and come forward and tell this nation what the genocide means to this country, because he has assumed the role of a father of the nation. These people and the communities we are talking about should be also his children.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Tjaronda.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in. If you would like to have more information on the German deal, the 18.4 billion deal offered by Germany, you can follow it on the Parliament Facebook page. It will be discussed in Parliament this week. Thank you for joining us.